What's the biggest lie any producer ever said? I have read the script. Welcome to the Learn Filmmaking podcast, powered by Akita Corporation and Bolton Film. I'm your host, Erlend Svensson, and today we have Simon Nilsen. Today's subject will be production and direction.
Awesome.
Now, Simon, why don't you tell us a little about yourself and your work?
How far do you want me to go back?
A few years, at least.
Well, I've started as a chef. That was my career from the age of 16 to 21, where I wanted to do creative work because I'm very restless. And then I hit the wall pretty badly and lost my creativity for the craft. And then I spent like 9 months trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And I went into like, should I do construction or design or architecture or fuck it, let's go to the military.
So you did a lot of different things.
No, not really. I contemplated for 9 months trying to figure out what to do while I worked as a waiter. And then I went to the cinema and I saw Joker by Todd Phillips. I was like, yeah, I'm going to make films. Why not?
Is the Joker your favorite movie?
It's probably one of the best movies I've ever seen. But that's my favorite movie. I mean, favorite movie is, it's hard to say because it changes every year. But I always go back to it. I always watch it once or twice a year. But my favorite film right now has to be Dune. I've probably seen it. I've probably seen it like 30
Have you read
times.
the books?
No, I have not. I've tried. I've tried to.
But they're long.
Sorry?
They're very long books.
Yeah.
What about your work as a film producer?
So after I decided to begin filmmaking, I started to study at Noroff, which is a vocational school in Bergen. And I came in there with...
What did you study there?
Sorry?
What did you study there?
Filmmaking. So that's a vocational school, so it's only 2 years. So you don't get a diploma or anything. You just go in, learn to make films, and then you go out. And then...
You're a filmmaker.
I'm a filmmaker, yeah.
So
there, like the first year there, you kind of learn all the different roles. But luckily, I'm not a technician, so I have no idea how to operate a camera or a sound mixer. And I knew that I wanted to do directing or producing or screenwriting. So I kind of like only did that for the first year. And then the second year, we had like directing, writing, and producing was one role, and then cinematography and lighting, and then sound and editing was like the three different branches that the school divided you into. So during those 2 years, I only did that, so I never touched the camera to film.
would you recommend going there?
Yeah, I mean, it's getting a lot better now. They got a new teacher or a new manager for the film making courses in Oslo and Bergen called Tommy Næss, which is a award-winning director in Norway. So he's now trying to create something called Noroff Creative Studios. So he's gonna try and make like the next big film school in Bergen. So no, but it's really good. I mean, you get to play around with really good equipment. I mean, they have Arri Alexa, which is a really good camera. But yeah, it's a good school. It's a good school. But I mean, you do a lot of stuff, and you have to do a lot of stuff on your own because
There's a lot of projects alone.
Yeah, it's a lot of productions. I mean, when I was there, I probably was... I think I was a part of about 30 to 40 productions, which like 10 were mine, but I like had my hands in everything as a production assistant. Or
Out of those productions, which one was the best, do you think?
that would be my final film.
Your final film?
Yeah, my exam film.
What was it about?
It's about a man who has psychosis.
Oh.
And he's listening to books and about like the dangers of sirens in the sea and old fisherman tales, and it's also combined with alcoholism and superstition. And throughout the film, he meets a siren who is kind of different from mermaids, because mermaids, they hunt on the open sea, while sirens, they live on these magical islands.
Magical islands with
yeah.
flying bunnies and the
almost
Easter fairy.
Almost. So in the lore, they actually are half bird, half female. So they actually have bird legs, and then they stand on these islands, and then they only appear when sailors are lost at sea. and then they sing to them, and then they drive their boats into the island, and then they crash, and then they eat them.
Oh,
So that's the difference between sirens and mermaids.
but they're terrible too.
Yeah, they're terrible, but they're beautiful to look at. So isn't it worth it?
Oh, maybe. You mentioned a film production a few times, but what exactly is a producer? Can you explain for people who might not know?
A producer is it's the man on the top. So he facilitates everything for the film to happen. So he manages budgets, he hires people, and he makes sure that the film gets filmed from A to C.
So he's sort of like the CEO of a movie.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So when you look for a script, what do you look for?
When I read a script.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on the pitch. So often when directors or writers come to you, they try to pitch the project to you.
Sort of like selling it.
Yeah, you're selling it, exactly. So it depends really on how they sell it. If they sell it with a lot of passion and a really distinct idea, it's more indulging for me to read it. And then when I read it, I looked for the end of the film. So when I read a script, I always look at the end and try to figure out what kind of feeling do you want me to sit with. Do you want me to be happy or sad or confused or angry? And then I see for the conflict of the film. What is the conflict for the main actor or the protagonist versus the antagonist? And if the conflict isn't there, the film isn't interesting. So some of the most boring films are some of the best because it has that hidden conflict that you sit with, like you as a viewer sit with, and you feel it, and you are in there, kind of. You put into the position, right? So for me, as a producer, I want to produce manuscripts that are interesting subtextly. So if a film is basic and you've seen this before and there's nothing interesting.
Sort of following like a format.
Almost, yeah. Almost. I mean, you can look at A24. They're the perfect example of choosing the right projects all the time. They're the best production company in the world, without doubt. Because they have produced 0 bad films. Because they only look for the interesting, unique ones. So they're kind of like indie filmmakers compared to Warner Bros. or Legendary and all of those others.
What's the best film you've seen from them?
From A24? Oh, that's a good question. I would say Midsommar or Hereditary. But I haven't seen the new film, Beau is Afraid, with Ari Aster. But, I mean, he made both of them, so they're fantastic.
They're probably good.
Yeah, I've heard it's really good, so I'm really looking forward to seeing it. And it's Joaquin Phoenix, my favorite actor, so it has to be
The
good.
Joker.
Yeah, the Joker. Oh, yeah.
Conflict. There's in movies there's a lot of conflict. Sometimes it's war, sometimes it's love, and sometimes you never know. But there can always occur conflicts in a production of a movie. Do you ever experience conflicts?
Oh yeah, all the time. I mean, the job as a producer is also you're a fireman. You extinguish burning fires when they appear, and there's always problems from pre-production to post-production. I mean, there's always conflict between you and the director, because even though the director is in charge of the creative freedom, I mean, me as a producer, I have quite a lot to say on the final product, right? So there's always a bit conflict with creativeness, cinematographers, and like I mean, there's always conflict. So the role of a producer is often to manage the situation to the best of their capacity.
How do you handle these conflicts whenever they occur?
It really depends on what kind of conflict it is.
Well, what's the most common one?
That's good. I don't know. I mean, every production is different. But I've never experienced like proper conflict with anybody on set. It's mostly been disagreements and timing issues.
So if someone shows up late?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want that. We did a production now not long ago where the director was late and the DOP was late for the morning meeting. And then the next day, the first AD was late for the morning meeting. And that's like the key roles. So that was kind of like, as a main as a key role in the film, you don't show up late, especially the first AD, because he or she is in charge of the set, right? So they can't be late. So there was like, I didn't yell at them, but I was said like,
don't do this.
yeah, this is not acceptable because we can't start without you. Like, I can do the morning meeting, but I'm not in charge on the set. That's the first AD, right?
Was this your worst conflict?
Sorry?
Was this the worst conflict that occurred?
On that set, no. I don't think there was any big conflicts on the set. I mean, it went really pretty well. But I did a production last year as a junior producer on something called Rust Film Workshop. And me and another producer, we were in charge of like 80 people, so it was a big, massive crew. But we did 2 films at the same time, separately on the same location. But then we had these dancers, and it was cold and it was late, and they didn't have a lot of time to practice. And then this one girl, she like couldn't get it. She couldn't get the choreography, and then she just snapped at everybody around her. And
that's not good.
No, that was pretty bad. So we were in, like, me and the producer and the director. She was producer and director. We kind of had to decide if we wanted to send her home.
That's a difficult choice.
Or keep her. But she wanted to be there, and I told her like, okay, but if you want to be here, then you have to do what we say, because I mean, you have a contract, you have a working contract, so you have to do that, or we're gonna send you home, and we have to do everything again because she's kind of in every dancing scene, and so that was a big conflict. But in the end, we managed to find a solution for all parties, and we.
That's great. That's great. It's always great finding solutions. Have you ever had a production go and just like that, entirely smoothly, no problems at all?
I don't think so. I mean, every production struggles with something. I mean, the most fluid production we had was probably for my short film, because we were a small crew, very small crew. We were, let's see, me, Ivan, Karete. We were 7 crew and 2 actors.
So 9 people in total?
Yeah, I think 9 or 10 people in total. Like on set. And then we traveled to a cabin, and we were there for like 5 days. So we had like no problems with transportation or food or people showing up late because they were right with us. I mean, we faced complications with the actors going into the cold water, because we filmed in the water in the beginning of May, and it was blowing, and it was...
Wasn't in the mountains?
No.
It wasn't?
No.
It was like on the beach.
It kind of. I mean, we have like a small beach at the cabin, so we kind of put the boat like not a few meters outside of the beach, so it wasn't deep, but it was cold. It was like probably 6 or 7 degrees in the sea, so it was pretty cold.
A film made in the cold, and that's a good marketing tool, probably. As a director and a producer, how would you market a film correctly? Like, do you think there's a recipe for making a good marketing of a movie, or is it just random?
I mean, it depends on I mean, for a short film, it's different from a feature film, because a short film, you don't really market it because you're not going to make any profit on it, right? So you're only going to send it to festivals and try to get it marketed there. But the better you make the poster, the better you make the trailer for the film and the synopsis and the logline, the better you market it. But it's hard to figure out what does the festival likes. For feature films, it's different. It's totally different, because you have a target group. Like if you look for the marketing for Smile, the horror flick, they hired women all around the world to stand at like big, massive concerts,
and they smiled.
And they just did that. And that's creepy. And people are like, oh shit, this is for the film Smile. That's interesting. That's cool. And then some films, like The Last Duel with Ridley Scott, who they didn't market, just did absolute shit. Like it didn't make any profit. So for short film, it's hard. Now there's a company in England called Festival Formula, who kind of does that for you for short films. So they help you with festival stuff.
Do they just like market it, or?
I mean, they kind of send it around. So you send a film into them, and you say, or they're gonna ask you questions like, what do you want with the film? Oh, I want to be Oscar nominated or BAFTA nominated, or I want to win Best Director, or I want to meet people. And they kind of facilitate a list for you, like 50, 70 festivals that they think they're going to get into, and they think they're going to nominate you for an Oscar and BAFTA or any big awards. So that's kind of the big new thing.
Speaking of awards, you've won a few awards yourself. Science of the Sea, winner short film of 2 national and 1 international. Can you tell us a little about it?
The film or the festivals?
The film. Like, how did you come up with the idea?
So the Song of the Sea is the Havet song with the psychosis and the siren. So I began writing it like my first year in school, because I wanted to have an idea or a finished draft before we even began pitching.
The perfect film.
The perfect film, indeed. So I worked quite a bit on it. Like, I think it was a year of just writing, and it was 8 pages long, so it's not long. But every kind of dialogue had to have a meaning, because the film isn't based on dialogue. It's quiet. It's slow. It's a slow burning film. But I was fascinated with The Lighthouse from Robert Eggers, which is this psychosis that is slowly developing, and this old man who seemingly has sex with a mermaid in the end, right? But I began the film with a different idea, a totally different idea.
What was that idea?
That was a man who had cancer in his throat, which is you're basically dead, or you just have to remove everything. So in his final days there, he took a lot of painkillers, and he kind of started hallucinating. Oh. And then apparently, or in the film, a new neighbor is going to be there to kind of rescue him from the sea, because he was drowning. And then throughout the film, they attach a bond, and in the end, when he dies, it turns out that that neighbor was his dead brother, who he talks about throughout the film. And then I pitched this idea to one of my other director friends in school, and he said, "Oh, that's my idea."
You had the same idea?
We had the same idea, and I was like, "Oh, shit, okay."
Is that common?
Yeah, it is pretty common to have similar ideas. So I kind of rewrote it, and then for some reason I added a siren. I started looking up like myths in the sea, and then I kind of added a siren in, and then it just developed more and more. And then I talked to my sister, who's a psychologist, and we talked about psychosis. And that would be interesting to like work on psychosis.
Yeah, I could definitely make some good ideas with things like that.
Yeah, because you have such more, like a lot more creativity.
To see if your best movie, it was really something in development. Would you consider it successful?
I would. I mean, now I'm kind of tired of it and look back at it as a failure, because I always do that on all my craft, because I see all the flaws I did. But I mean, that's part of like growing up. I mean, or growing as a filmmaker, you learn new things and you see your mistakes and you learn from them. So I learned a ton from the film, and I got so much out of it. I mean, professionally and at festivals, I've made so many connections with it. Yeah. And that film kind of started my career now in Bergen as well, to be able to work with production companies, because it did turn out pretty good. I mean, it looked fantastic because of the cinematographer is fantastic. So it looked really good, and we had a really good composer, and the sound team was fantastic, and the editor, and I mean, everybody did their part really, really well.
You consider it a failure, but at launch, would you consider it a success?
Yeah.
How do you what do you measure like what is a successful movie? A short definition, maybe.
For me, it's a flawless story.
A flawless story.
Yeah, with no plot holes or any mistakes in the film. That's, for me, is a success. I mean,
The Godfather.
I really love The Godfather. I do, but it's not my favorite film.
I understand.
For me, like a masterpiece is Joker. Joker is a masterpiece. I mean, there are plot holes in every film, right? You can't find a single movie that doesn't have a plot hole, because people really focus on finding plot holes. But success for me isn't doing super well on festivals or getting famous or getting money. It's about telling a good story, and if people have an emotion, or if you can change somebody's perspective on something, that's a success for me.
So successful film is sort of art.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
You have a little upcoming project. We know that you got financed about 50,000 American dollars, euros, or about 500,000 Norwegian crowns. Tell us a little about that one.
So that's a film I actually wrote in school as well.
Oh.
So I've written a lot of stuff in school because it was COVID. I had nothing else to do than write. But it's called Fry, which is based on Mary Elizabeth Fry, who's a famous American poet, who wrote a poem called "Do Not Stand at My Grave and Weep," which is a funeral poem, which is one of the most beloved funeral poems in the world.
Do you remember it?
Not on top of my head, but "Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I did not die." That's kind of like the two most famous words, the sentences. So it's a film about a woman who's traveling to her own funeral.
Oh.
But it's experimental, so it doesn't have an antagonist or a protagonist or kind of like a linear storytelling. So it's just like you're just watching her go to the end of the life. So we worked quite a bit on the idea now because we got rejected from NFI, which is the Norwegian Film Institute, for a bunch more money. So we're working on like really making the idea more strong. So now I'm working on the idea that when you die, the brain is still active for like 4 to 7 minutes is like kind of the rough time that the scientists have said, and that time can be infinite for the person who's dying. So in the film, she's dead, and then the world around her is like dissolving into like black, thick like oil, like raw oil.
Oh.
As the brain is like slowly like deleting itself, kind of. So her good memories are the last to go away. So when she like walks throughout to her funeral, the world dissolves more and more around her. So the film is very VFX heavy, which some people don't like. But for me, it's not a CGI battle like Marvel. This is a very particular way of storytelling. This the way that the brain dissolves, and that's kind of like death sneaking up on her, and then in the end she dissolves into the air. So that's kind of the film.
There's a theory about the popular movie Interstellar that at the end of a movie he's not really alive, he's dying, and watching his wishes. Maybe sort of like the funeral one. Do you think that's a possibility?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the film is, which I discussed with NFI, is that they really like a film that is like clear and concise and people understand it. But for me, films that you really understand it, like the first time you watch it, is boring for me because I really want to sit there and like try to piece out what does the filmmaker mean, right? So for this film, I want the audience to sit there with different feelings. I want each of the audience to kind of contemplate on how they feel about the film and what do they think that I mean about the film. What's my message? My message just death might not be death.
It's not the end.
It's not the end. I mean, I'm not religious, so this film is not about religion, but it's more nobody knows what's afterlife. So this is kind of like my process of death. That would be a nice goodbye. Yeah. So like Interstellar, I mean, every film that Christopher Nolan makes is a question in the end.
Yeah. Do you prefer producing or directing movies?
Both.
You prefer both?
Yeah, I do.
But if you had to pick one,
if one for the rest of my life, I would do directing.
Why?
I like to be creative. I like to be there and talking to people and creating something with somebody. That's what's interesting for me. And to be creative and to work with composers and create like masterpieces in music and cinematographers and create something. Like what drives me to the cinema is when I go to the cinema, I really want to sit there and forget everything else for 3 hours and just live in the world of the filmmaker because there's no rules. There's nothing else but the filmmaker's rules. So I often go to the cinema multiple times to see a film.
Oh, how many times do you usually see a movie?
Between 2 and 4, 6 times per movie, maybe. I mean, if I really like a movie, I'll go more times. Like I watched The Northman from Robert Eggers like 12 times in the cinema.
Oh.
Because I loved it, because it's a cinematic orgasm.
It's a cinematic orgasm.
Yeah, it really is.
Explain. Is it like you're sitting there and your head is empty? You're like, whoa, what did I just watch?
It's the like you see an image, just to be like, Jesus Christ, this is so beautiful. Or the music or the scenery, and kind of like Dune was a masterpiece in the cinema. If you watch it at home on a computer, it's totally different.
Yeah, there's a very different feeling between watching it in your TV or in computer at home.
Yeah.
But movies in the cinema are an entirely different feeling.
It is. But it was same with my short film. Because I saw it in different we saw it at school at a projector, and we saw it at a small cinema. But then I went to a film festival in England called Bolton Film Festival, and we had to extract a DCP from the film, which is like a digital cinema package that you deliver. That's like when you're going to show it in cinema, you have to have a special format for it. So that was the first time I actually saw it in a DCP, and that was a totally different experience.
What was it like?
It was better.
Was it this cinematography, cinema orgasm?
Yeah. I mean, the sound was better, the images were better, everything was just better at the cinema. It was kind of fun. But what drives me with film directing, especially, is I want to give that to somebody else that I do.
So you want to pass it on?
Yeah, I want people to come in and sit there and watch my film 2 or 4 times because they like it and they see hidden meaning, or they just like are in awe of the things we create. That's kind of what I want to do as a director. I want people to come to the cinema
and watch a piece of art.
More than once, yeah. Yeah. Producing, you can do the same, but it's not as fun.
Now we're approaching our time, but so we have one final question. What advice would you give to someone who's starting out with either film directing or film production?
Put as much passion as you can into a project.
Put your heart into it.
Yeah. I mean, Quentin Tarantino has a really great quote. If you write something...
I don't like feet.
Yeah, I don't like feet. I do like feet. If you write something, you should write it so deeply emotional that you're afraid to show it to anybody else. That's when you make good films. And if you really love films, you can never make a bad film, right? Yeah. So, yeah, work hard. Watch films. Basically, watch films. I watch maybe 2 films a day.
2 films a day?
Yeah, I try to.
Have you seen 2 films today?
Not today. But I saw a film yesterday.
Oh.
Yeah.
Which ones did you see yesterday?
Triangle of Sadness, again.
Interesting.
I liked it. And then I saw The Office after that.
The Office.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here, Simon.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was great having you here. Well, that's it, folks. See you next time.